So most of us love a good underdog story. You know, the kind of story where the little guy goes up against the big guy and the little guy finds a way to win. Maybe that's why I'm a Brewers fan. Either I love underdogs or I just haven't suffered enough yet. Well, David and Goliath was the classic underdog story. The youngest son of a patriarch, Jesse, was sent to the front of the war between the Israelis and the Philistines. Now, the Philistines were the people who inhabited what we now call the Gaza Strip. The Gaza Strip in ancient Israel, the Philistine territory, included land in the southwest corner of the modern nation of Israel, right on the Mediterranean Sea. And the Philistines in this story were the big guy. Their nation was wealthy and they were hungry for more wealth. So they invaded the land east of them, the modern state of Israel. Now we wonder why so many people wanted the land of Israel. Well, the Philistines wanted that land because Israel was where all the ancient trade routes intersected. And every ruler of Israel, starting with Saul, knew enough to charge tolls for all of the caravans going through east, west, north, and south. Kind of like going through Chicago. Now, as a result, Saul's coffers were rich. And rather than pay out tolls, the Philistines decided they wanted to collect the tolls. So they invaded Israel. Now, David's older brothers were fighting with Saul's army, and the Philistine army and the Israeli army were at a stalemate on hills just to the southeast of Jerusalem on either side of the Elah Valley. David had been sent by his father to take food and supplies to his older brothers. Now, each morning, a giant of a man, Goliath, think Andre the Giant, a giant of a man stood on the top of the Philistine hill and shouted to the army of Israel. He challenged any of them to fight with him. After all, he was big, he was bad, he was tough. He'd take on anybody, and the winner of that battle would win the victory for their army. Well, the average Israeli man in those days was less than 5 feet tall. Not a one of them was willing to take on 9-foot-tall Goliath. And so his daily challenges did nothing but succeed in completely demoralizing the Israeli army. And that's what happens in underdog fights, isn't it? The big guy uses size and power to intimidate the little guy. And that's often what happens when we confront evil in our lives. When we confront evil in our world, it seems so big and so powerful and so overwhelming and unremitting. And as people of faith, we're often like the Israeli army. We'd just rather go and hide when evil comes our way. Because the evil seems so big and so powerful, we just want a hero to come rescue us. Well, David, a young man who had not yet reached his full height, was incensed by Goliath's challenge. David believed that the power of God was stronger than anyone or anything. Goliath served false gods, he worshipped false gods, and David wondered how he had the nerve to insult the army of the God of Israel. Now, Saul, as a way to encourage his soldiers to take on Goliath, had offered his daughter in marriage to any man who would fight Goliath, and that man would never have to pay taxes again. It's kind of a good bribe, isn't it? Because if you marry the daughter of the king, you really don't have to worry about much the rest of your life. So David honestly could not understand why no one from Saul's army had the nerve and the courage to step forward to fight Goliath and collect that wonderful reward. He questioned their faith, he questioned their courage, and he questioned their common sense. Now, David knew something the rest of the army of Israel did not know. David knew that the God of Israel was the living God of all creation. David knew that the living God of Israel was stronger than any enemy of God and God's people. David knew that the living God of Israel was stronger than any false gods, stronger than any evil the followers of the living God could ever encounter. So he volunteered to go fight Goliath. Now, King Saul did his best to get David prepared for battle. He put his own armor on David, and this is where it's helpful to remember that Saul at the time was chosen for king because he was a head taller than any of the other men in the crowd, and quite good looking. So he takes his extra large armor and puts it on this kid, along with his sword and his shield, because he wanted David to be as well armed for the battle as Goliath. And let's just say David was a bit overwhelmed by Saul's armor and weapons. But we do that, don't we? When faced with evil, we often try to fight it with the same weapons that evil is using. Nuclear arms races and weapons build-ups are an example of fighting evil with its own weapons. We use phrases like fighting fire with fire and beating down the bully and let's keep it even, let's have a stalemate. We trade shouts and insults and hatred. We try using hostility to defeat hostility. And more often than not, all that does is inflame the conflict and raise the stakes. Now, David couldn't move in any of Saul's stuff, so he shed those weapons of war and instead used the same tactic on Goliath he used to protect his father's sheep and goats from the lions and the bears. And yes, ancient Israel did have lions and bears. David went to the stream, a wadi, which is a dried up stream, and picked up 5 smooth stones. And he put those into his shepherd's bag, and he pulled out his sling. And with his sling in one hand and 5 smooth stones in his bag, David marched out to face Goliath. We heard in the story that Goliath, laughing all the way and walking behind the man who carried his shield. It's not hard to be brave when you have somebody carrying a shield in front of you who's going to get hit first. But anyway, walking behind the man who's carried his shield, walked toward David, and David grabbed one stone from his bag, swung his sling, released the stone, it bounced off David's forehead, or Goliath's forehead, and immediately Goliath fell forward and died. Well, the rest of the Philistine army saw what happened to their hero, and they immediately turned tail and ran, and the army of Israel immediately ran after the Philistines, chased them all the way back to the Gaza Strip. Evil was defeated by one boy with one smooth stone who believed in the power of his God, the living God of Israel. Faith in God and the God-given skills he had developed replaced all of the modern weaponry at the time, replaced all of the insults, all of the bullying, all of the hostility. Now, I'm not suggesting we use slingshots and rocks to take down evil in our lives, but I am saying that faith in the power of God to confront evil in our lives and evil in our world is the starting point for us as individuals, as political parties, and as a nation. Rather than trusting modern warfare and modern weapons, perhaps we can trust our God to overcome evil. But that depends upon us being willing to put our faith into our God and to trust our God to overcome that evil. Words, that depends on the words that we choose to share with our elected representatives. Depends on our faith and our willingness to use words to confront those who are trying to destroy us and destroy our souls. Using the power of God depends on using our words to make peace with our enemies. Depending on the power of God depends on us using words to proclaim kindness and act with justice. Now, I'm not a pacifist by any stretch of the imagination. If somebody came in here with a weapon and was going to line up all of our Sunday school children and shoot them dead, and I had a weapon to respond, I'd probably use it. Adults, I'd think twice. Seriously. But I am not a pacifist, but I believe strongly that the power of God is what we need to use first and foremost in our lives, in our communities, in our nation, and in our world. Because it is the power of God that gave David the ability to use one smooth stone and his sling to take out the biggest evil confronting Israel at the time. And we can try fighting fire with fire. We can try weapons buildups, but they've not proven to be the lasting answer in the past. But faith in the power of God, we know through Jesus our Christ, does work. We've seen it with David, we've seen it time and time again, that faith in the power of God to confront evil in our lives and in our world does work. But we have to have the trust and the confidence in God to use it. This morning as we leave, I have a basket of smooth river rocks. They're small. Feel free to take one. You notice I didn't hand them out before. I know you all too well, and you know me too well. So feel free to take one of those smooth stones and perhaps carry it in our pockets, because every time we're tempted to confront evil with our anger and our hostility, and to fight fire with fire, to trade insult for insult, and to take down a bully with our weapons, maybe we can touch that smooth stone and turn first to the God of Jesus our Christ, and know that that is a power that nothing can defeat, that that is a power that will keep us safe, that that is a power that will overcome evil in our lives, in our families, in our communities, in our nation, and in our world. The power of God is what we need now. Amen.